Hi everyone, it's Jason Sansusi with Do You Know Drones. I am here at the Westin Downtown Denver at the Oil and Gas Conference presented by Enercom. I'm here to understand how oil and gas companies are responding to new ESG goals. The Biden administration would like to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 52% by the end of the decade. That is a big goal, not audacious, and the technology allows these companies to do that. I'm here to get their take on what they're going to be doing to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions by the end of the decade.
So, as geologists in the oil and gas industry, there's actually been a variety of different really cool ways that drones have been used over the last couple of years. Actually, the first one is probably most nearest and dearest to my heart, is you can take them to outcrops and get into all sorts of nooks and crannies that you couldn't get to when you were just a lowly geologist scrambling up the outcrop trying to describe the rocks. And so, from a safety perspective, it's nice, not almost dying while you're clinging to the edge of a cliff face, trying to describe the rock faces that are there. But also, especially in terms of the imagery that you can capture with the cameras, it surpasses anything we were able to do before, where you can end up with very detailed descriptions where, you know, on the part that's not an absolute cliff face, you can go measure that section, describe the rocks that are there, but then you can correlate it across the entire photo pan, which again is higher resolution quality than we've ever seen before. So that's where a lot of geologists would use it. As far as the oil and gas writ large, probably the main area where it's getting used right now is by a lot of oil and gas operators to track emissions.
Still here at the Oil and Gas Conference, and I'm having some great conversations with some industry leaders, from geologists to business developers working with large oil and gas companies and analytic providers. The consensus is that there is no consensus on these specific issues related to technology for ESG monitoring. There seems to be some of the larger producers that are looking for large and developing large programs, working with large integrators, and others that are sort of just dipping their toe in the water, and others that are a little bit opposed to it. They're just, they're not seeing the quite benefit yet, but there does seem to be a bit of a dichotomy. So that's really interesting to me. Technology obviously can be an enabler, a key enabling technology like methane emission tracking from satellites, drones, and handhelds and aircraft. Those technologies are becoming more advanced. So it's interesting to see how the technology is being accepted or not accepted by the industry. So I will be very curious to see where this industry takes it as time goes on, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So the criticality of our technologies for ESG, for an energy clients, comes from the fact that you can't really manage what you can't measure. And so today, for those very widespread, large assets that have a very large footprint in very remote locations, there's no real mean of measuring what's happening there without remote sensing. And so what you're doing with drones is interesting, but it's just a partial answer. I'm doing these things with satellites, which is also only a partial answer because it's not the same resolution, not the same approach. And the key now is in the integration of these different technologies to bring actionable information, data that people can trust. I think 2021 is going to be the year of integration of those technologies and our partnership between those different technologies and startups in that space.
Drones have specific flight patterns that they run all the time. They've got hyperspectral meters on there that can image things like methane emissions, etc., to be able to track where the emissions are occurring. And this is important because certainly we can use satellites, similar technologies and satellites to track it, but we lack the resolution, whether it's temporal or spatial. We just don't have the detail. And particularly here in Colorado, as you likely know, some of the rules and regulations have changed in recent months. And a lot of operators on their own are setting up these drone systems to be able to track, where these emissions are occurring. And oftentimes it's during, after the well is initially drilled and completed, the flowback phase is usually an awful lot of gas emissions that they're wanting to keep an eye on and find ways to decrease that. But also a lot of times the equipment, like I said, these pneumatic pistons and things like that get a little bit out of date, and maybe the bearings or the little flanges in them aren't as sealed tight as they used to be. They can track that, they can image that, and identify hot spots for methane emissions, which obviously is quite a potent greenhouse gas in and of itself. And so those are at least a couple of the ways that drones can be used. Sometimes even just pipeline tracking for you really don't want a hole in your pipeline. That could create a very big problem above and beyond CO2 or methane emissions. You'd prefer not to have an explosion, or you're not delivering your product. So drones are getting used for remote work and save a lot of time and money in the oil and gas industry.